Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always by my co-host Nick Filato. And today we're lucky. We got a special guest on. It's Warren Sharp. You obviously know him from all of his football analysis. I'm sure you have already followed him on Twitter, but if not, he's one of the best follows on Twitter. And that's at Sharp.Football. That's SHARP football. But today we're here to talk about something better than that. We're here to talk about the Sharp 2025 football preview, an insanely comprehensive football guide. I'm looking through this. We're reading through it now. Nick and I were just stunned at all the detail in this. If you love the kind of analysis that we do on the show, which is football-based analytics, you're going to love this book. Now, it's not as much film, but it is all based on film analytics, all the stuff that we talk about on the show. And we're going to get into a lot of that today because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the Giants, just reading through some of the efficiency metrics in this book. So for those who are interested in the book, after listening to what Warren has to say today, you can actually get the book as a special if you're a listener of this podcast for $1, the PDF book, using the code GIANTS. And that's at Sharp. That's the Sharp 2025 football preview. Nick will put the link in the notes. It's an unbelievable value, unbelievable buy. You're going to learn a lot of what we'll talk about today, but a lot more than what we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, Warren, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Happy to join you guys. Certainly a lot to talk about with the Giants this upcoming season, the direction of this franchise, etc. But I'm just thrilled that, we got preseason games here coming up at the end of this month. We've got players reporting to camp in 5 days from today. So it's just a real hotbed of NFL news, and kind of the trend of the direction of this offseason is really going to pick up pace here soon. And I'm happy to be done with this. Is what the book looks like. 586 pages, 32 different team chapters. And now that I'm done with it, I can join guys like yourselves and chat about different teams. So this is the most fun part of my off season, is being done with the book, being able to talk to people about the teams. So I'm looking forward to it.
And every square inch of every page in that book is jammed up with great data. I'm not even kidding. I'm looking at it right now. So it's good stuff.
Excellent job. Hopefully enjoy. If you drank a beer or something, you deserved it after all of this, for real. Also, I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge that you have an awesome mustache as well. We have two guys here with great mustaches, so I had to put that out there in the football world. Now, let's talk a little bit about football, Warren. And I wanted to start with the strength of schedule for 2025 before we talk about 2024, just because a lot of people on Giants Twitter, we're rightfully talking about it. The New York Giants seem to have the hardest schedule in the entire National Football League, and you also articulate that in your work as well. So I just wanted to ask you, why exactly is this schedule so hard? Like, how are you basing that? And I guess, how do you think the Giants are going to fare with this terrible schedule that they have in 2025?
Well, it's brutal. Normally, you would think that a team that was within one game, week 17, if they lose that game, they have the number one overall draft pick. A team that's within one game there would have a far easier schedule the next season. And the NFL tries to give teams easier schedules the following season if they fare poorly the prior year. But that only accounts, that only really is shown in 3 games. 3 games in terms of who they play. They'll play 3 other fourth place teams within their own conference. So that means that they played the New England Patriots. They're going to play the New Orleans Saints and the San Francisco 49ers this year as a result of that. But the issue is they play the NFC North and the AFC West. And both of those divisions not only were relatively strong last year, but could theoretically be even stronger this year. The Vikings aren't going to win as many games as they did last year, but that's a team that still could be considered to be a decent team this year. And the win projections, the forecasted win projections, are based upon the strength of schedule from Vegas forecasted wins for this upcoming season. So I'm not looking backwards at how teams performed last year. I hate the John Maddenism. You are what your record says you are. A lot of teams last year had either better records or worse records than they deserved based upon tons of different luck factors, whether it's, red zone bounces that went their way or did not go their way, field goal luck, fumble luck, turnovers, etc. And so we're really looking at what are the projections for this upcoming season. But even if I don't look at the future and I look just back at, efficiencies of teams, I still show the Giants with the number 2 most difficult schedule based upon efficiencies of who they're playing this year, based on how they finished the season last year. But then if you look at the forecast, they have the number 1 most difficult schedule in the NFL. So the only real team, the tough part is, think about this. when do the 49ers ever finish in last place in that division? That's what you have to play the
Right.
49ers. This is a team that's perennially first place in the NFC West, but because of injuries and some things that were unlucky for them last year, they finished fourth place. You guys have to play them. The New England Patriots, another team, is on the come up this upcoming season. Second year with Drake May, new head coach there, Mike Vrabel. I think this is going to be a much better team than they were last year, and Las Vegas indicates that as well. Last year, at this point in time, the New England Patriots were favored in 1 game out of 17 heading into the 2024 season. This year, heading into the 2025 season, you probably will never guess how many games the New England Patriots are favored in. I'll just tell you, they're favored in 11 games this year
Wow.
in 2025. So I don't know. I don't think they're necessarily deserving of being favored in 11 games this year, but I do think they're going to be a lot better, and Vegas certainly indicates that. So it's just the Saints. Like, the Saints are that only team on your entire schedule that's like, okay, we got these guys. We should be able to take care of business here against these guys. But the rest of it's just going to be a dogfight at best. So, it's not looking great for you guys. What are you favored based upon win totals right now? Sorry, the Vegas lines. You're favored in 1 game out of 17 this year at this moment. So it's going to be a tough season, which doesn't necessarily bode well for your coaching staff, for Brian Daboll, etc. But you guys got a lot to overcome.
Yeah, one thing I do love about this, and ever since you've kind of come out with this, it's projecting forward. So this is my favorite thing. A lot of these strength of schedule analysis is just based on last year's win totals. And what happened last year isn't a good indicator of what's to come. I think you've done a good job breaking that down. I've definitely won some cash off of these early schedule predictors with some NFL season-long unders, Warren. But I want to get into a different topic real quick. And I saw throughout reading your book that the Giants had the 5th most valuable. They were top 5 in 2025 draft. Their 2025 draft. Now, the draft just happened. A lot of people grade drafts in a certain way, and I want to hear about the methodology for how they were determined to have the 5th most valuable draft. Because I think we can look back at drafts and just assign grades, but I think there's a different methodology to this that is probably more valuable.
Yeah, this is a specific metric that is going to look at the wisdom of crowds methodology, which is most people that are going to be experts at predicting the drafts and the order and sequence of different players and ranking the players heading into the draft. If you amass a lot of these people together that are all really good at what they do, we should be able to come up with a pretty reasonable metric for the players that should go in the first round, top of the first round, players should go in the second round, players should go in the 4th round, players that should be undrafted. And as a result of that, you can compare what individual teams do against that collective big board of all the different players that are being mocked there based upon, combining all of these, whether it's mock drafts or big boards together. And a lot of these guys that go into this model, the individuals who are submitting their big boards, very accurate year after year, really good. There's a guy at my site, Ryan McChrystal. He's really good at what he does, continuously finishing like top 10 in terms of accuracy. At any result, the New York Giants had one of the best drafts in terms of getting value. Draft capital over expectation is the terminology, DCOE. And this looks at, are you picking players in the draft that were expected to go later than where you got them, or are you picking people and reaching on them? You're taking them too high in the draft. And so the Giants got a lot of solid value here. And I think they hit a lot of the pieces that you guys really needed. I mean, we know one of the strengths of your team is the defensive line, and you did go after the defensive line with 2 of your first 3 draft picks to try to help out on that side of the football a little bit. But you went out and you accomplished getting a veteran quarterback in Russell Wilson to start the year via free agency. Then you went and got Jackson Dart, and you drafted him in the 1st round, obviously on a trade up. So you have maybe the quarterback of the present, the quarterback of the future on the roster right now. And you also got a guy there in the 4th round in terms of Cam Scadaboo, who not necessarily a sexy guy whatsoever. However, I just posted a statistic today on my Twitter about performance down inside of the 5-yard line. And the New York Giants had the worst performance in terms of EPA per rush attempt inside the 5-yard line. And specifically, your minus 1.02 EPA per rush was the 3rd worst mark of any team since 2000. So you were terrible in those metrics, and now Cam Scatterbo might come in, be able to gain those tough yards, those important yards down near the goal line or on like 3rd and 4th and short to help keep drives going or help put points on the scoreboard. So I really think that you guys got some players here that are going to help, but it remains to be seen whether this coaching staff is actually going to have the chance to work with them over several years, because that's typically what it takes for some of these younger players to really come into their own. And while you got some good talent, if you don't win this year and if you lose pretty badly, this coaching staff, these players might be working with new coaches next year.
As just a quick follow-up to that, I don't know if you have it, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you know where they fared in this metric after the 2024 draft? Because that was one that also came with excitement. I felt like they did a good job of maybe getting that value, and then it actually did play out that way last year for them.
I could easily pull that up in about 2 minutes if we keep talking.
We'll come back to that then. We'll come back to that one. Nick, you can jump in.
Yeah, I wanted to just ask about your opinions on Brian Daboll. We've touched on Brian Daboll the last 2 questions because the Giants' offense has been pretty inefficient. And I wanted to just ask you, as just a football mind, how you quantify how much of that is Brian Daboll's responsibility? Obviously, he's the head coach, or how much of that does lie at the feet of his quarterback situation? I just wanted to see how you, as an outsider to the Giants world, really, what your perspective was on that.
Yeah, so my frustration, and by the way, where you guys ranked in this metric last year, I've got the image here. Just got to find you on the page here. You ranked 17th.
Okay.
Gotcha.
In last year's. So right smack dab in the middle of the league, slightly below average, even though it was 17th, slightly below average. The frustration to me with Brian Daboll is he, like, sharing the frustrations that he's probably had. He didn't pick Daniel Jones to be the quarterback. He came here from Josh Allen and began working with Daniel Jones, took Daniel Jones to the playoffs. They won a playoff game the first year here. Obviously, he won Coach of the Year. They did a lot of things that first year, and I wrote about it extensively in my football preview, to handhold Daniel Jones, to work around his deficiencies, to try to win games in spite of Daniel Jones. But then after that, they kind of took that restrictor plate off and said, if we're going to win, we're going to get to where we think we need to get, you're going to have to play quarterback. We can't just hold your hand all the time. You're going to have to go out there and try to play. And it was obviously a disaster, and it wasn't productive. And a quarterback and his play caller are just tied so closely together. It's really difficult to separate the two. And that's why you can have some decent play callers working with some bad quarterbacks, and they're never going to look like good head coaches because they're working with bad quarterbacks. And, there's Cleveland Browns with Kevin Stefanski is one certain name that comes to mind. And there are others out there. It's just difficult situations. I think that the New York Giants and Brian Daboll, they have a good coach there. They have a coach who knows that side of the football well. But there are things that are frustrating to me about him, despite the fact that they are such a, they've had tough luck with their quarterbacks. Number one, red zone efficiency. This is where play calling really comes into mind. Dead last in red zone efficiency last year, 31st in red zone efficiency in 2023. You've got to work around your quarterbacks. You've got to try to figure out a way to be better in terms of your red zone efficiency. Scoring early in games. Their rank in first quarter points over the last 3 years. Last year, 30th. 2023, number 32. 2022, number 32. If you're constantly playing from behind, trying to overcome deficits, you're not going to be able to even call the best plays down the stretch because you're always playing with one hand tied behind your back. The defense knows what's coming because they know that you're going to be playing frantically. There are just aspects of this, and when the Giants are winning at halftime, they're 13-1 ATS, 11-3 straight up over those 3 years. When they're losing at halftime, they're 5-28 over the last 3 years. They're 10-22 ATS. So they should know that they stink if they're playing from behind. They should know that they're great if they're playing from ahead. They should try harder to start the games as quickly as possible, jumpstart this offense. And that's the scripting and that's the play calling. And you know that your quarterbacks might stink. How are we working around this? So there are definite frustrations from my part in terms of how the offense has looked over the last couple of years. Daboll needs to improve that. That's not on his quarterbacks, although you can't exclude his quarterbacks from the discussion. He needs to be better. his situation has been terrible. So, I mean, I think everybody in the room bears some blame here for the way this Giants offense has looked in general.
As we move it forward and we kind of focus in on this whole change at the quarterback position, we're going to talk a little bit about Russell Wilson and what that can mean for how he meshes well with Brian Daboll. I think it's important to note, as I just want to get your opinion on this and kind of put it into framework. On this podcast, Nick and I, from the film we've evaluated, do believe that Daboll has been very held back by his quarterback play. We are very harsh on the film we've seen and the reality of Daniel Jones, and obviously Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito are not NFL starters. So with that said, is Russell Wilson at this point an NFL starter? And that's the question I want to get into, that and how does he mesh with Daboll? Because there were some good things throughout reading your book that I saw, specifically when it came to Russell Wilson, his boom bust rate. And I want to hear about what that means as far as from a clean pocket in early down situations was very good. I think best in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, but you can correct me on that from reading the book. But how is this going to work? Is this going to be the upgrade that we hope it can be, Nick and I?
Well, I don't know that it's going to be the upgrade that you hope it can be. I think we're going to get a lot more out of Russell Wilson than I think the common man expects, because the common man thinks he was trash. The common man saw last year and the way that the season unfolded, they had a bad taste in their mouth from Russell Wilson's end in Seattle, his whole time that he spent in Denver. They saw Justin Fields come out and do okay at the start of the season, and then Russell Wilson comes in and they win some games against some teams they should beat. They lose all these games down the stretch, and they think that this guy's washed and completely terrible. My opinion, I mean, I'm curious to hear your guys' opinion from some of the film that you guys are watching, but I think that he is worse than what he was the beginning of his career in Seattle. But that being said, he's the most talented quarterback that Brian Daboll has had to work with since Josh Allen. The data reflects the fact that he was actually really good last year, better than what most people expect or thought of him when he was playing behind a clean pocket. When he was playing in a clean pocket, Russell Wilson, you mentioned the boom bust rate. So when a quarterback generates an EPA, which is expected points added on a particular play, of at least 1 point, that's a boom play. Okay. When he generates an EPA of at least -1 or worse EPA, that's a bust play. So think about it like you're throwing an interception at your own 8-yard line that gets returned for a touchdown. That's going to have massive loss of EPA. That's a bust. Think about you're throwing the ball, and if you throw maybe a first down on like a 3rd and 1, that's not really a boom play. That's, you're getting positive EPA, but it's not enough. You throw a 40-yard completion, you throw a 15-yard touchdown, things of those. That's a boom play. That's a +1 or greater EPA. Russell Wilson had the best ratio of boom to bust of any quarterback in the NFL. He ranked out of 43 qualifying quarterbacks when he played on early downs behind a clean pocket. And this is the time that I like to evaluate quarterback play because it's the most consistent. Quarterback should be consistent. If you're not being hurried, you're not being pressured, you're not playing on a 3rd down based upon situation. You might be throwing it shorter, deeper, etc. You're not playing in the 4th quarter because you might be trailing, just chucking it all over the place. So early down performance from a clean pocket, out of 43 quarterbacks, he was 8th in EPA per attempt, 14th in success rate, 16th in yards per attempt, 8th best in touchdown to interception ratio, and like we just mentioned, #1 in boom bust rate. All of these metrics, were much better than Justin Fields playing in the same exact offense there. So he was definitely an elevator over Justin Fields, but B, much better than anything that the New York Giants have been able to work with over the past several years. So, when the New York Giants quarterbacks the last 2 years, in the same situation, early downs from a clean pocket, they were 25th in completion rate, 29th in yards per attempt. This is out of 32 teams, mind you. 30th in boom bust rate, 28th in EPA per attempt, 29th in success rate. So they were at the bottom 5 of the NFL, and Russell Wilson, top 5 to top 10, sometimes about 17th out of 43 quarterbacks, above average to borderline top 10. Now, when you look at some of the other things that Russell Wilson does really well, throwing those deep moon balls, out of 4 qualifying quarterbacks, he's 4th in accuracy when throwing 15+ air yards, 4th in EPA per attempt. The Giants were horrific in those metrics. Russell Wilson also, the other interesting fact that we have to put in here is he played in his 2 prior stops in Denver and in Pittsburgh. And both of those offense coordinators play a lot of multi-tight end sets, heavier personnel. That's different than what Brian Daboll and the New York Giants play. They play a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. And when Russell Wilson was playing in 3 wide receiver sets in Denver and in Pittsburgh, he was top 10 in almost every statistic. 4th in EPA per attempt, 9th in success, 10th in yards per attempt, number 1 in touchdown rate. But when he played in the heavier personnel groupings with 2 or fewer wide receivers on the field, 41st in EPA per attempt, 41st in success rate, 37th in yards per attempt. Like, he moved from top 10 to bottom 10 easily, just based upon how many receivers he had on the field. It wasn't necessarily the best fit for him in some of those other offensive schemes. I think it's going to be a much better fit for him here in New York with the Giants. So I think he's a better fit for Daboll in his offense, and I think he plays better than what people are going to remember him from playing in some of these prior stops. I think he's a better quarterback than what he exhibited or what people's thought processes of him. But that being said, he is limited. He has his bugaboos. He's horrible when he's under pressure, and that's the biggest issue that you guys are going to have to deal with. Yep. How often are you able to keep him clean? Because when a play breaks down, he tends to lower his head. He thinks he can still move around the pocket a lot. He's not nearly as mobile. He's slower, and he's just not as quick in the pocket to escape pressure or to find an open receiver, and he really delivers some bad production in those spots.
I think it's safe to say, Dan, that we share a lot of Warren's opinions here. Like we would agree with, like, Dan and I are excited about the upgrade from Russell Wilson over Daniel Jones because of his ability to generate explosive plays and to just keep the offense on script. But a lot of this does, and it is contingent on this offensive line and the clean pocket right now. I just wanted to ask, there was a pretty big clean pocket improvement from 2023 to 2024 after the Giants added Jermaine Illuminor and John Runyon, and hopefully saw a little bit of progression from John Michael Schmitz. I wanted to just ask your opinion on the Giants' overall protection, and if you think it might be conducive to maybe allowing Russell Wilson to reach the peak Russell Wilson at age 36 or whatever he is right now.
Yeah, that's a great, like, the context of, can he reach the peak of himself behind this offensive line? Because the peak of himself is obviously less than what it once was.
Yep.
I still don't think this offensive line is going to provide him the ability to reach that peak. You are right to note, I mean, 2 years ago, the Giants took 85 sacks. The most, I think, in NFL history. They had horrific production and efficiency in 2023. One of the things that they did a lot better in 2024, even though their quarterback stunk, is they were just at least getting rid of the ball a little bit quicker, right? They weren't pushing it down the field, but they were at least getting rid of the ball quicker. And as a result, they took far fewer sacks. The offensive line didn't have to pass block quite as long. They looked a little bit improved. From a skill position perspective, the guys at my site, we take four of the sharpest guys at my site. I'm not part of this. I try to stay out of the rankings. They all submit their scores. The skill level, the talent on the offensive line for the Giants, they rank as 29th in the NFL. You guys might feel differently. You might rank them a little bit higher. I'm not quite sure based upon the way that you're talking. Maybe you feel they're a little bit better than 29th. But that being said, they're still a below average unit, and that is going to hurt Russell Wilson a little bit in this offense. So it's going to be incumbent upon Brian Daboll to figure out when is the right time to take shots and what is the protection that we can get, and how do we ensure that when we're taking these deep shots, we're not predictable, whether it's a down distance formation when we're taking these shots, so that the defense can't cue it up and figure out a way to get at Russell Wilson when he's obviously having to drop back and hold the ball a little bit longer to let those deeper plays develop.
Warren, I wanted to ask you real quick just about Malik Nabers. You've been studying the NFL and doing such a good job covering the NFL for such a long time. You see a lot of these really talented rookie wide receivers come into the league. And I just wanted to ask you your opinion on Malik Nabers and if there's anything analytically that just really stands out about why he may be like a top 5 receiver in a couple of years if he's not already budding in that direction.
Well, the thing about Nabers is he was targeted, I think, on 31% of his routes. He did a really good job. I want to say I tweeted out earlier this summer of his open score, which is like a metric that looked at, if you look at the player tracking data on Next Gen Stats, they have a metric that's called open score that looks at how frequently a receiver, based upon certain route types, and they obviously look at all the different factors here and try to created a level playing field for all the receivers. He was the best in the NFL at getting open, despite being a rookie. To me, that showcased, especially because he was clearly the number one target for the New York Giants. They didn't have a lot of receiving threats out there. So he was always going to be going up against usually some of the top cornerbacks and top coverages. That's where they were going to cloud or try to figure out a way to minimize what Malik Nabers is going to do offensively. And the fact that he was still getting open at that rate really speaks volumes as to what I think his upside can be. Naturally, it didn't pay dividends in terms of like his production was solid last year in terms of what he was delivering, but it didn't help the Giants win games. And so now he's going to have to continue to hone his craft. But I think the future is very bright for Malik Nabers. Consider everything that Nabers was doing there with open score and just the general production and his target rate, and look at the quarterback play. So the quarterback play was horrific, and he's still out there running all of these routes, still out there trying to get open, despite the fact he knows Tommy DeVito is throwing him the football, despite the fact that he knows, all these horrible quarterbacks are out there throwing him the football. I hope that he develops some quick chemistry with Russell Wilson, and they can come out and Malik Nabers can finally make some of those routes that he's running and getting open on actually pay off for himself and get those yards because the target is accurate. And then for the Giants, help them win games as a result of his play. I mean, that's one of the things that's got to be the most frustrating. All these wide receiver ones, especially, they're known as divas and whatnot. They're out there running routes all game long, running for yards and yards and yards, sometimes never getting the ball. When they get the ball, it's sometimes not accurate. When they do get an accurate ball and are able to catch it, doesn't end up winning a game for them. They still lose the game. And the frustration that must have when you're a young player in the NFL, I can't imagine the psychology behind it. So hopefully it pays off for him and the Giants in 2025.
Flipping it to the other side of the ball, Warren, I want to hear a little bit about what the analytics and the data say about the Giants defense last year going into this year. So their plan at least on paper, it seems, we didn't generate a lot of turnovers in the passing game. Let's go out and fix that. Sign Paulson Adebo, who makes plays on the football, sign Javon Holland in the secondary, and then draft Abdul Carter, among a few other players that we've discussed, all with the idea of generating pressure. Now, the Giants also had a gaping hole in their run defense last year. So that seemed to be like less resources went into fixing that. Based on what the data says, where are the Giants defense when it comes to run defense and pass defense moving forward? And do you think they made the right investments this offseason to improve?
Well, I love this side of the ball that's actually the most optimistic for me. I mean, I think you're going to see the biggest change in the offense with Russell Wilson being inserted there, but the defense already in some of the metrics was borderline top 10. And in this regard, I think that they are only improving themselves. And it's fun to talk about this team in the context of if the defense only needed a couple pieces to really potentially move into that like average to slightly above average to up to like borderline top 10 mark, then they theoretically could impact the game so that the offense doesn't have to do quite as much. And so that's really what the Giants need to hope for this season is they need to be a little bit more balanced. Yes, they, overall in defensive efficiency, they were 22nd. On early downs, they were 16th. They struggled more on third downs, giving up some of that higher leverage plays. I think that they made some of the right investments, to your point. I think that they are going to be a better unit. I like I'm trying to figure out where we had them ranked here from a top front seven perspective, but I know we think that they have one of the better linebacking cores in the NFL. The front seven, I mean, we've got them as the fourth best front seven in the NFL. I knew it was up inside the top 10. Wasn't sure exactly where. Fourth best front seven. Secondary, though, 23rd. They need to do a better job of stopping the run, to your point. But this is a team that certainly is capable to keep the Giants in more games. It will definitely help, to your point, if they can get those turnovers. If they can generate those game-changing plays, set up better field position, or score points, it's going to go a long way to helping the Giants in 2025.
Scoring points is so massive in that equation. And I love how you have this set up too, Warren. And everybody, I could not suggest this more. You got to go check out Warren's this entire book. This is very well done, well put together. But you have the New York Giants positional unit rankings, and all you see is red, and then that bright green right there for the defensive front seven, a big old number 4. But yeah, this is a treasure trove of information.
Yeah,
well, that's one thing. I just want to mention one of the things. I've had some people reach out, like, there's 586 pages in this book. Each team chapter is like 17 pages. It's a data book. Am I going to be overwhelmed? I'm not too great with data. And my point is, I'm a visual learner myself. We try to make this book very easy to digest and very much built on visual learners to show things based upon color coding or give you, it's full color. Some of these preview books that you buy are black and white. This one is full color. I think it really helps things pop and stand out, and you can digest them and process them a little bit easier. So this is really a book for anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about the New York Giants, wants to play fantasy football this year, wants to bet on some of the games this year. It's got something for everyone. And obviously for $1, which is what your audience is going to pay, you're not going to find better bang for your buck, no pun intended.
And you get great reference points in this too. Like I'm looking through this red zone efficiency, offensive production with motion, pre-snap, and play action. We talk about all this stuff a lot on this podcast, not with the actual reference points of how the Giants fared versus the rest of the league. It's going to be extremely valuable for us moving forward, Warren. Really appreciate this. And for all of you who are listening, and I know you guys are really into this stuff because you're listening to our type of podcast, check this out. You can get it for $1 using the code GIANTS. And that's the PDF book. It's a Sharp 2025 preview. Warren Sharp is the man. And thank you so much for joining us today, Warren. Really appreciate this conversation, you taking the time.
Yeah, let me ask you guys this, because I always try to, if I'm going on shows, I want to get your guys' opinion. You guys clearly study the Giants more than I do because this is your team and you're focused on them 365, every day of the year. What's your prediction from a win perspective? I don't know if you've done this before. I don't want to spoil anything that you might be doing in the future, but where do you see this team right now? The Vegas sports books are forecasting 5.5 win total for the Giants. Do you see them exceeding that? Do you see them, and most of all, regardless of how they do from a win perspective, do you see Brian Daboll on this staff getting at least one more year with this team?
Yeah, so I'll go first. I do see Brian Daboll getting one more year unless it completely implodes. I think ownership was really sick of recycling the coaches like they've been doing. I really think the ownership really likes and respects Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, and the selection of Jackson Dart gives me a little bit of an idea that I think they will give them one more year unless like the locker room completely turns on him. So that's where I'm at with the coaching staff. As for wins, I think the Giants will be a more respectable team. They won't be we'll just run over this team. Will be an easy win for sure. But I don't necessarily know if that's going to result in like 8 wins or anything. It could result in only 5. It could result in 6. That's kind of where I'm at right now here on July 7th. I think the Giants, I think we'll watch them and we'll feel better about the team, but I don't know if that's going to translate to wins.
Yeah, Nick and I are pretty aligned on this, Warren. I think when it comes to the first question, you have to understand John Mara, the Giants owner, is not setting the highest bar for bringing back Daboll, in my mind at least, right? Like, I think as long as the season ends with, are the vibes good? He's coming back. It's not going to be about wins.
Yeah.
It's not going to be about production. It's because at the end of last season, we got Giants fans flying planes over MetLife Stadium, like fire this, fire that. If that's happening again, it's over for these guys. It's a vibes thing for John Mara, and he doesn't want to move on from coaches, especially after letting him draft a quarterback. So it depends a lot on that. But I think the vibes will be high, and I think it won't result in more wins necessarily. Probably, I'm not going to make a prediction just yet. I want to wait for training camp, but probably in the 6 to 8 range. But I do think what it will result in is more games where the Giants are in it. Less, like, because I saw your stats on it. The Giants were 0-3 in games decided by a field goal, 1-8 in games decided by a score or less. But the fact of the matter is, with those 1-8 record in games decided by a score or less, a lot of those were like the Giants were getting killed and then they scored some touchdown late and it was like they lost by 7, but it wasn't really a close game. I think there'll be actual close games and they might push teams that they're not expected to compete with to the end, to the fourth quarter. They may lose those games, but they'll push them. And for me, the main reason just comes down simply to, I believe Daniel Jones and Drew Lock were unbelievably bad at the quarterback position, at getting the plays on time, in rhythm, at the simple functions. Like just looking over the numbers you went over, Warren, just the fact that Russell Wilson is actually competent on early downs if you give him a clean pocket. That's not something the Giants have had at any point with those two quarterbacks, Locke and Jones. They could not operate the offense even when given time. And that's going to make enough of a difference in my mind, at least, to score more points and make them competitive with the defense taking a step forward. But thank you so much, Warren, for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we all love to work out. The summer's coming around. You want to look good in your bathing suit. But in order to enhance your workout, you want to go and use MitoPure from Timeline. This is a great product. When I started using it, it makes me feel stronger, gives me more energy. I recover quicker. I'm in my 30s. I still have the energy to work out. And if you want that energy, you really should give Timeline's MitoPure a shot and work it into your routine. The great year of 2025 is your year to be the best, most energized, most revitalized you. MitoPure promotes cellular renewal and mitochondrial health to address common signs of aging at the root. MitoPure is the research-backed innovation that unlocks your fullest potential. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure right now. So go to timeline.com/banter. It's timeline.com/banter. That's TIMELINE. So, Dan, that was a lot of knowledge right there with Mr. Warren Sharp. How you feel about it, man?
Yeah, that was only like a drop, like literally a
little
teardrop.
drop.
Yeah, like I'm looking through this book that he put out. It's insane. And he's right. It's color coded, and that helps you kind of get an idea. Just kind of looking through the down and distance efficiencies and tendencies of the Giants, their red zone efficiency, and even just the tendencies. Giants were 9th in pass rate in the red zone last year. I think that makes sense after Warren kind of went over. They were historically bad when it came to running the football in the red zone.
Historically bad. I mean, we saw those Tyrone Tracy Jr. fumbles. I think Singletary fumbled in the red zone as well. And every time we got down there, it was like, oh, here we go again. And it's not even just on the running backs. The Giants' offensive line, their ability to generate force into contact and move these big bodies, it's not something that was really popping out on tape, right? So enter Cam Scadaboo. That guy runs low, man, and he has a lot of force in that contact balance. I'm imagining that's one of the roles that Dable's hoping that he can really seize upon. And then hopefully Tracy can hold on to the damn football if we're down by the goal line as well. So that's something that I am looking forward to. Now, also, we were talking about the wins, the over-under and all that. And I don't want to come out with like a direct prediction quite yet. We have training camp. There's still a lot to go with this summer. But, dude, if the Giants can steal like 3 games in the division, they got to go over that, right? It's just, can they? They don't beat the Dallas Cowboys. They just don't. The Philadelphia Eagles are like the best team in the NFL right now, one of the best teams in the NFL. Obviously, as we said, they're playing the West and the NFC and the AFC West and the NFC North. And then you're just looking at Washington. It's like, that's a good team. I think the Giants can still beat Washington, though.
Right.
So you got to steal some of those games. Some of these divisional games are so pivotal. And I feel like we've been saying that for so long, and the Giants just can't get out of their own damn way unless it was playing Washington prior to Jane Daniels getting there.
Well, yeah, it's really going to come down to that for as far as beating the over, beating their total, and becoming a competitive team. And this over under, Nick, opened at 3.5. I don't know if you knew that, and then it jumped to 5.5. A lot of people bet the over 3.5.
But that opened 3.5 in like January, right?
Very early, early.
Yeah, February,
even before the schedule, just with the idea in mind of we already know most of the opponents of the Giants, or we already know all of the opponents of the Giants, and the opponents are not great for the Giants. I mean, like we talked about on the show, like the fact that they have to play the San Francisco 49ers is one of their easy, what their reward is for finishing last place. It's a joke. It's the literally last team I would want to play in the NFC West for me by far. Maybe the Rams. No,
the Rams,
I'd rather play the Rams than the Niners, honestly. I think the Niners will be back to their dominant ways this year.
I hope not, but you're right. I mean, the thing about the Niners is every time the Giants played them, and they played them a lot recently, and the Giants would get their asses kicked. They had like a much more physical defense. Now,
True.
I think they're going to get that back now that they got Robert Saleh and they added a few pieces to that defense up front. Yeah, Saleh coming back. It's not good. Like Rams or 49ers, I don't want to play either of those teams. The Cardinals, yeah, I'll play the Cardinals.
Yeah,
I'll play the
Hawks with Darnold. Yeah, so it's just like we got screwed there. But ultimately, like what, going over this, Nick, with Warren, what it kind of comes down to me is like, where will this offense move? Because like he said, he's excited about the defense side of the ball too. We are as well, Nick. I have very high expectations for how this defense will perform if they can stay healthy. I am not worried about the secondary. I think they've done enough to improve there, and I don't think it matters that much because of how good the line is. Am I worried a little bit about the run defense? Yes, more than a little, maybe, but not as much as others. I think that's going to look better as well with the additions they made and just the functionality. Even just having a guy like Carter in there, he's not known for his run defense, but I watched so many plays, and I know you did too, watching his film, of him being super disruptive in the backfield for a TFL, or at least screwing up a run play by getting in there. So to me, it flips back the offense side of the ball. And you discussed it earlier, like one of the areas that really killed the Giants when you look at it from the micro level is the red zone offense. And part of that was Jones. Like, they were ninth in attempts and Locke and whatever. They were ninth in attempts and still one of the worst, least efficient passing teams. But they were the dead last least efficient run team. And I cheated a little bit, Nick. I'll be honest. We'll do the full one later. I got into it. It was tough not to. I watched a little bit of that Dallas Giants game we're gonna go over. I cheated a little bit. I watched a second Giants drive. I watched 3 drives total. And there was a run on that second drive where the Giants ran G lead with Soybert, and Bradshaw's going to the edge. He's got nothing. And I saw him just understand this in the short space where to jump cut. And he makes this unbelievably smooth lateral jump cut to get through a really tight space and turn something into nothing. And I was just like, it clicked in my head. I was just like, and they're not similar builds, but they're somewhat similar builds. It clicked in my head. I was like, I've seen that Cam Scatterboo jump cut hundreds of times watching him every snap at Arizona State. That smooth lateral jump cut to create some kind of space for himself in a voided area where there's nothing. And that's what the red zone is. Like, create space when there's nothing. Tracy, a little bit of a high runner. Singletary, good, like in a phone booth, getting in and out, but not that same lateral jump cut ability that Scatterboo has. And I think they had that in mind when what do you have, 17 rushing touchdowns last year at Arizona State? I think he alone is going to be a big boost to the red zone offense.
We need to get this red zone offense back to 2022 status. Like 2022 status, I think they were like top 5 or 6 in red zone efficiency. I think they had scored a touchdown on over 60% of their red zone trips or something. Like, they weren't settling for field goals like they do so consistently over the last few years, if they even get down into the red zone, or have Brian Dable just be desperate and be like, fuck it, we got to go for it on 4th down, 4th and 3, let's go. And then Jones throws 20 yards downfield, nowhere near the freaking target. It's absolutely abysmal. We can't have that type of trash anymore, man. So, getting back to the red zone package, we used to talk a lot about Mike Kafka being the brains behind that 2022 red zone package. I don't think that was pure conjecture, because I think Kafka might have alluded to that in one of those spaces that he did. I'm not sure if I'm speaking out of my ass right now, but either way, the Giants were creative. They were getting Daniel Bellinger involved. They were playing into Daniel Jones's strengths. And that's not, hey, I'm going to drop back and locate this target and layer it over a bunch of zone defenders and throw a touchdown pass. It was more like, hey, let's run an option. Let's put a defender in conflict. Let's get out on the edge. And then let's have a 2-versus-1 against one defender if they're aligned in this defense. And they did that several times. They scored some early touchdowns in that 2022 season. Now we have a completely different quarterback, so that it won't be necessarily as much trickery, because the Giants relied on a lot of trickery through Daniel Jones's tenure with Brian Dable in the red zone. Remember the play where he handled the ball behind his back, and because he's very smooth when it came to handling balls, Pauls. So he was doing that really well. But now you actually have a quarterback who can pick through zones and anticipate and throw. Even he's not the best throwing over the middle of the field, but he can do it at a higher level, I would say, than a quarterback like Daniel Jones. So hopefully just having Russ there will improve this overall red zone defense, and Brian Dable will have more options to choose from once they get down there. And hopefully they'll get down there more often too, and there won't be as many 3 and outs, because there was just so many freaking 3 and outs. I think the book says that the Giants were first in the league in 3 and out percentage.
First in the league in 3 and out percentage on the, not inside the red zone. I mean, the numbers are staggering, Nick. Just red zone efficiency wise, they were 29th in EPA per play, 30th in early down EPA per rush, and 29th in EPA per rush overall. Their rush success was 29th. No wonder they didn't run the ball down there, but their pass success was 29th, and their EPA per dropback 31st. So just at yards per attempt, 31st in the passing game in the red zone. They were literally one of the worst teams. They were also 24th in motion percentage. They didn't use a lot of motion. That was something they did during that 2022 season, like you talked about with Mike Kafka in the red zone calling the plays when the Giants were a top 10 red zone efficiency team. That's something I expect and hope to come back with Mike Kafka taking over the plays, most likely. I mean, we don't have confirmation on it, but it's been the case so far. I'm happy about that. I personally, I like Dable. I think he runs good concepts in the passing game and good route combinations. I think Mike Kafka is a genuinely better play caller. I think he set up run versus pass better in his first season, set up the plays to look like run that were pass better. And his red zone specifically, he wasn't 24th in motion percentage. And, Warren talked about this, but really the big jump as far as quarterback play goes is in 2 ways for Russell Wilson. One way we've talked about all offseason, Nick, which is he's been hyper efficient as a deep passer. And the stats in Warren's book show that. We've talked about that a lot. But one thing we haven't talked about as much, which is where a big jump I expect to happen, is early down, first and second down plays and success rate. As Warren brought up, when Russell Wilson was protected last year on first downs and early downs. I think that's first and second downs from a clean pocket. He was one of the most efficient passers in the NFL with a 19-to-1 boom to bust ratio, like making explosive pass plays and making efficient throws, keeping it on time. The Giants were not that. They were the complete opposite of that. The Giants actually ranked 13th in pass frequency on second down situations. They were above average, but they were below average in first down rates when they decided to pass. 56% versus the NFL rate was 63%. And on first downs, their pass rate was fourth most in the NFL, but their success was 22nd in the NFL, or sorry, 20th in the NFL. So again, they've calling passes and they're on first and second down, but they're just not efficient with it, even when given a clean pocket. So this is another area where the Giants are really going to need to take a jump. To me, it's red zone offense, it's the explosive pass plays on early downs, and it's just the overall efficiency on early downs that hopefully Russell Wilson will be able to bring.
Yeah, that's what we're all hoping for now, man. And training camp's not far away.
I can't wait. Yeah, it's only a couple weeks now.
Dude, if we can just, man, I don't want to beat this dead horse, but if Russell Wilson can just be league average, if he could be 23rd best quarterback and keeping this offense on script and being able to hit the occasional explosive plays to allow that defense to pin their ears back and do their thing. And I'm glad Warren brought that up too throughout the interview. He mentioned it. He's like, yeah, if the Giants can score some points and get out to these early leads, then this defense can feast. This defense can then get after the opposing offense. And then the Giants can actually, like, the strength of the Giants team is their pass rush by far. And they were hardly able to use it last year. It was never really enabled.
Correct.
Only through the first half sometimes. In the second half, it was like, yeah, it's 3rd and 7 and they can pin their ears back here and then force a punt. That's all well and good, but you want to be up by multiple scores at times to really allow these guys to just collect stats. Like, it's a miracle the Giants even led the league in sacks up until week 7 or week 8. Like, that's kind of nuts when you think about how bad the team actually was and how few leads they held.
Yeah, it's insane. It shows, one, just how many sacks Dexter Lawrence gets for an IDL is insane, and that's partially why I think they're, up there leading the league. And 2, it just shows that the Giants have the capability to get after the quarterback with or without a lead. Now, this year, we're hoping they have more leads, so it's going to give them more opportunities. It's going to get better. But also, I'm not sure, Matt, like, the ceiling of this defense we didn't get into, because I feel like a lot of it, is based on projection. That's why I didn't really dive into it too much with Warren. Like, there are going to be numbers in 2024, but 2024 defense, man, like, the first half of the year is so different than the second half. Once Dexter Lawrence went out and Brian Burns playing through this injury, it was just a totally different defense. Your 2 best players by far are playing injured. One was out of the year and the other was just not himself.
Yeah. And another thing about the defense too, you have to imagine the interception rate is going to regress to the mean, right? Or progress to the mean, maybe we should say. But like, you would imagine that there would actually be some more turnover luck, and that the Giants will find their hands on footballs that were thrown by opposing quarterbacks. Maybe, I don't know. It sounds like a crazy thing, but you add Tyler Nubin last year, he gets his hand on one freaking football after having 13 picks throughout his entire time in Minnesota. And Dan's dying over here. You have a mute button, buddy. No, but Paulson Adebo, you add him. Like, there's so many reasons why one would believe, especially if that pass rush can get home a little bit, that the Giants will come up with some turnovers, and that could flip the script of some of these games, right? The Giants are going to be playing the sleeper role once again, like they did in 2022 when they were successful. And this is a better team than they were in 2022 with a much more difficult schedule, that they have to overcome. But I can see them surprising some teams. I can, because I think they're just going to be competent if they could stay healthy. And it's a test for Dable at this point. Now we're really going to see if Brian Dable can get something out of a quarterback that he somewhat chose in Russell Wilson, and more so in Jackson Dart, who is a rookie coming from an unconventional offense in college.
So much of this to me, Nick, and we didn't go over it with Warren because I know Warren, and not because of this, but I do know that Warren is super high on the Commanders, just looking through, following him on Twitter. But to me, it all kind of will be defined and started in week 1, because I think at Washington is one of their more winnable upset games. I actually am going to predict most likely the Giants to win that game, depending on how the offseason goes injuries wise. I think Washington, A little bit overrated based on how they played last year down the stretch. B, they have some holes on the roster that aren't talked about. C, I think they're going to overlook the Giants going into this game by a lot. And the Giants are playing that underdog role. And this game will pretty much define the season for me, honestly, because if they come out and play to my expectation, give them a game and end up winning the game, my record prediction will be a lot different than if they come out and lose the game, or if they come out flat in this game entirely. Then it's like, I'm thinking 3 to 5 wins at most.
If exactly, and if the defense can shut down Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels, like the blueprint that many offensive coordinators are going to use against the New York Giants is very similar to how Cliff Kingsbury calls his offense. It's going to be quick. Remember week 2 last year? It was, I'm getting the football out of my hands. The Giants play from depth. We're just going to throw a bubble. We're going to throw a screen. We're going to get the football into Terry McLaurin's hands. He's going to pick up a couple yards because we want to slow down Dexter Lawrence. We have a bad offensive line. The Giants have a great defensive line. Let's get the football out of our hands and slow everything down a little bit. There's going to be so many offensive teams that are going to attempt to replicate what Cliff Kingsbury does against the Giants if it is successful. But if Shane Bowen can come out and this defense can come out and shut down that approach, that just throws a curveball to all of these offensive coordinators who have to play this defense. So that's why I really desire that the New York Giants come out strong in week 1 and punch Washington in the mouth. I really think it could set such a tone that the Giants cannot be messed with. Like if you set that tone early against a divisional rival who was just in the NFC Championship game, this season could be a lot of fun.
Yep, it could be. I think it's going to be surprising. Well, obviously, I want to wait for training camp to get my excitement fully up, but I am more optimistic than I ever. Yeah, pause. I am more optimistic than. Does a pause still count if you say it that late? I am still optimistic about the Giants this year, and we'll see what happens here as we move forward. And as I continue to go through it, Nick, I've just been very, very, very impressed watching Tyrone Tracy. I was surprised by how many 10-plus yard runs he had going through the film. I sorted it by 10-plus. There was a lot to work through as I'm going through. Bang, bang, bang. And a lot of these were honestly him processing the cutback lanes really freaking well and processing the hole really freaking well and then getting through it. It wasn't just necessarily like, oh, this play was blocked up really well and Tracy kind of just like fell forward or picked the hole that was given to him. So that vision, I don't think it can be taught. It's why I'm starting to get really high on Tracy. Now, Scadaboo is a player I loved on tape. We talked about him earlier. I think he can be a red zone weapon and a weapon in the passing game. That's where I think he could be best. But I think this will be, in my mind at least, Tracy's backfield to lose going into camp as well.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see that, especially if he takes the steps forward. He can be a big part of this offense. I don't think Scadaboo is going to go anywhere, nor do I think Singletary will either. But either way, it's going to be it's a situation that is funny for us to find ourselves in, because since we've been doing this podcast and we've had Saquon Barkley up until last year. So it was always just like the one-man show. Now we're talking about, RBBCs and how they're going to split carries. And it's just like, oh, we never really had these conversations on the podcast because it never really applied to us.
Right. And now it does. All right. Thanks to everybody listening to the Big Blue Banter podcast. Keep it locked and loaded. We will I got to talk to Nick about scheduling, but we're looking in the next coming days to be doing what we talked about last year, a live show where Nick and I rewatch the 2007 Giants versus Cowboys playoff game and kind of just walk through it and talk through it. There's so much. I told you, I cheated a little. I watched 3 drives and I already have like 15 things I want to talk to you about watching that game.
So we're just people. That's going to be so much fun, dude. People are going to join in and they can like watch the game with us. We just go,
exactly.
That's summer fun right there.
Pause it. Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your week. Please hit the like button. I forgot to ask this. Damn it. I forgot to ask this earlier. We need more likes. The last video didn't get that many likes as much as I wanted, and comments to juice it up the algo. So juice that algo. I want to get juiced up. Have a good rest.
Give me all the juice. And also, again, it's only $1 for Warren's book.
Yeah.
You can use that promo code Giants.
So worth it.
Which is something that he only is saying on this podcast for the Giants, of course. But like, it's worth it. Trust me, especially if you're a fantasy football player.
Agreed. There's also fantasy football analysis. I didn't get to that with Warren, but I wanted to, and that's from Rich Rebar, who's one of my favorite analysts in the game. All right. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you very soon within a couple days with this Giants rewatch.